It's 3:07 a.m. The room is dark. The only light is the faint glow of your phone, reflecting off the ceiling. Your body is still, but your mind isn't. Your heart races. Your chest feels tight. Your thoughts won't stop. What if I can't pay this bill? What if the car breaks down tomorrow? What if I lose my job? Every what if spins faster, each one a tiny explosion in your head. Your pillow is flipped, your blankets rearranged, your eyes staring at nothing. Because this isn't about being tired. This is fear, pure, unrelenting fear, and you are not alone. Millions of Americans lie awake in the dark tonight, staring at their ceilings, running the same mental math, feeling the same suffocating dread. But what if I told you that the fear you feel doesn't have to control you? That underneath this panic, there's a single attainable number that can finally make your mind stop racing, your body stop tensing, and your heart stop pounding? The number isn't $1 million, it's not even 6 figures, it's something much closer, something real, something that can change the way you feel about money forever. The silent epidemic of money stress in the US. Money stress isn't just common, it's cultural. Studies from the American Psychological Association show that more than 72% of adults report feeling stressed about money at least once a month. That means nearly 3 out of every 4 people around you, coworkers, friends, even the neighbor who looks like they have it all together, have felt that same 3 a.m. panic. But here's the part nobody talks about. This kind of anxiety doesn't come from greed. It's not because people want mansions or luxury cars. It comes from instability, from not knowing if you could handle a $400 emergency without panic, from living one flat tire away from financial chaos. It's not about wanting more. It's about not wanting to drown. The emotional weight of what if. If you grew up in the US, you've been told your whole life that hard work leads to security. But what happens when you are working hard and it still feels like you're hanging by a thread? That's where the emotional disconnect begins, when your effort doesn't match your peace of mind. You're working 40, maybe 50 hours a week, and yet you're still one paycheck away from fear. That contradiction creates what psychologists call chronic low-level stress. It's not a full-blown panic attack, but it's always there. You might not even notice how it leaks into your daily life. You're more irritable at work. You snap faster at your partner. You avoid checking your bank app because you don't want to see the number. That's not laziness or irresponsibility. That's emotional defense. Your mind is trying to protect you from the constant uncertainty that money brings, the quiet shame behind financial fear. Here's another layer that often goes unspoken in American culture: shame. Money anxiety isn't just about math, it's about self-worth. When you can't pay a bill on time or have to decline a friend's dinner invite, it doesn't just hurt your wallet. It hurts your identity. People start internalizing that shame. I should be further ahead by now. Everyone else seems to have it figured out. Maybe I'm just bad with money. But those thoughts are lies we tell ourselves. Because the truth is, most Americans were never taught how to handle money, how to save, how to prepare for emergencies. And yet, we still blame ourselves for struggling in a system that was never built to make saving easy. So when you're lying awake at 3 a.m., it's not just fear of bills. It's the weight of expectation, the belief that financial peace equals personal success. And when you don't have that peace, you feel like you're failing, even when you're doing your best. A nation running on caffeine and anxiety. Now, let's zoom out. Imagine the millions of similar bedrooms across the US right now. A nurse in Texas staring at her ceiling after a 12-hour shift. A single dad in Ohio running numbers in his head for rent and daycare. A 24-year-old in Los Angeles refreshing Indeed, praying for a callback. A couple in Florida arguing quietly in whispers so their kids don't hear. It's not just individual stress, it's collective exhaustion. A country where people are working harder than ever, but feeling less secure than ever before. That's the paradox of the modern American dream. We've built a culture obsessed with financial independence, yet most people are living paycheck to paycheck. And that contradiction keeps people up at night, literally. The psychology behind the sleeplessness. From a psychological standpoint, nighttime anxiety about money isn't random. It's when your brain finally has silence. No emails, no traffic, no distractions. So all the worries you've pushed aside during the day come rushing back at once. Your body's cortisol levels spike. Your heartbeat speeds up. And suddenly, that one small what-if thought snowballs into full-blown catastrophizing. I can't pay this bill, I'll lose my apartment. If I lose my apartment, I can't keep my job. If I can't keep my job, everything falls apart. It's a psychological chain reaction, the human brain trying to predict disaster so it can feel in control. Ironically, The more you try to control it, the more powerless you feel. The turning point. But here's where the story starts to shift, because buried under that anxiety is something powerful: awareness. The very fact that you're worried means you care. It means you're paying attention. It means you want better, not just for your bank account, but for your peace of mind. And that's the first real step toward freedom. Because once you recognize that 3 a.m. panic for what it is, a sign that your financial foundation needs support, you can start building the structure that stops it. You can replace fear with a plan, and that's where the next chapter begins. The point where we move from anxiety to action, from sleepless nights to silent confidence. Because as we're about to discover, there's a specific number that doesn't just change your bank balance. It changes your psychology. It's the point where the fear finally starts to fade. And no, it's not $1 million. It's not even 6 figures. The surprising promise. You've probably heard this 1,000 times. If I just had a little more money, everything would be fine. Maybe you've even said it yourself, standing in line for gas, scrolling through your bank app, or checking your paycheck after taxes. It's a familiar thought, right? But here's the surprising truth. For most people, financial peace doesn't come from being rich. It comes from reaching one specific number, a number that's small enough to be possible, but powerful enough to quiet that 3 a.m. anxiety that's been haunting you for years. The myth of more. We live in a country built on the promise of more. More success, more money, more stuff. From the billboards on the highway to the ads on your phone, everything screams one message: you'll finally feel secure when you reach the next level. But here's the problem. The goalpost keeps moving. You hit 50K, and suddenly 100K becomes the dream. You hit 100K, and someone on Instagram makes 250K working from Bali. Now that's the dream. You see, more never ends. It's a treadmill that doesn't stop. And it's the reason so many Americans feel anxious, even when they're earning more than they ever have. Because deep down, the question isn't, how much do I have? It's, do I have enough to feel safe? And that's where the surprising promise comes in. The point where enough actually has a number that changes everything. Imagine this for a second. You wake up, check your account, and see $10,000 sitting there, untouched. It's not for bills, it's not for rent, it's not for groceries, it's just there. That's not rich money, that's not luxury money, that's peace of mind money. Because when you have that buffer, the entire emotional relationship with money shifts. Suddenly, life stops feeling like a minefield. The unexpected expenses, car repair, vet bill, job loss, don't feel like death sentences. They're just setbacks, manageable, temporary setbacks. That $10,000 isn't just a number, it's freedom from constant panic. The psychology behind the promise. Let's get real for a moment. Most financial stress isn't about how much money you spend. It's about how little room you have for error. When you live paycheck to paycheck, you're balancing on the edge of a cliff. One small mistake or one random emergency can send everything crashing down. But when you have even a modest financial cushion, your brain relaxes. You start making decisions from a place of calm rather than fear. Psychologists call this the security threshold, the point where your brain stops living in survival mode and starts thinking long-term. And here's what's fascinating. For most people in the US, that threshold happens around $10,000. That's not enough to retire. It's not enough to buy a house, but it is enough to quiet the noise in your head, because it tells your brain, if something goes wrong, I'll be okay. And that one thought, I'll be okay, changes everything. Breaking the millionaire myth. The American dream loves a good number, $1 million. It's clean, impressive, symbolic. But for most Americans, that number does more harm than good. It feels impossible, and anything less feels insignificant. So people give up before they even start. They assume peace is reserved for the rich. But that's the myth, because peace of mind isn't a luxury. It's a threshold. You don't need 7 figures in the bank to sleep at night. You need just enough to stop living in survival mode. And that's what the $10,000 milestone represents, the line between surviving and breathing again. Why this number works, and why it feels so magical. Let's break it down in practical terms. $10,000 roughly covers 3 to 6 months of basic living expenses for most Americans, 2 to 3 major emergencies, or enough runway to handle a job loss and bounce back without spiraling. That means when something unexpected happens, you have time. Time to think, time to plan, time to make smart decisions instead of desperate ones. And that time is priceless. When your back isn't against the wall, you start noticing subtle changes in your behavior. You negotiate better because you're not desperate. You take smarter risks because you're not terrified of failure. You sleep better because your brain isn't rehearsing worst-case scenarios every night. It's not about luxury, it's about leverage. The emotional shift nobody talks about. There's something almost spiritual about hitting that first financial milestone, because it's not just about security, it's about identity. When you have money set aside, you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstance. You start feeling like the main character in your own story again. That shift in identity, from powerless to prepared, is what people are really chasing when they say they want to be rich. They don't want yachts or private jets. They want control. And the surprising part? You don't need to be rich to feel that. You just need to stop feeling fragile. That's what $10,000 does. It takes you from fragile to flexible. The American paradox. Let's be honest, in a country where the average rent keeps rising and the cost of living feels like a moving target, the idea of saving $10,000 can sound unrealistic. But here's where the paradox kicks in. The people who reach that milestone rarely do it because they suddenly made more money. They do it because they changed their mindset. They stopped chasing someday wealth and started chasing stability. They realized that freedom doesn't begin when you're rich. It begins when you stop being scared. That's the surprising promise hidden inside this number. It's not about what you can buy, it's about what you stop worrying about. The quiet confidence. When you hit that $10,000 mark, something subtle but powerful happens. You stop reacting to every bill like it's an emergency. You stop panicking every time your phone buzzes with a payment due alert. You begin to trust yourself again, because now instead of asking, "What if something bad happens?" you can calmly say, "I can handle it." And that phrase, "I can handle it," is worth more than any luxury car, brand name, or Instagram success story. It's real, quiet confidence. The kind that lets you focus on life instead of survival, the transition. So when you hear someone say, "If I just had $1 million, I'd finally relax," remember this. The secret to peace isn't in chasing millions. It's in reaching enough. And for most people, that enough starts at $10,000, because that's not just a number, it's a promise. A promise that you can stop living one step away from panic. A promise that the fear that's been following you since those sleepless nights can finally begin to fade. It's the promise of control, of confidence, of quiet. And that's something no paycheck can measure. The everyday financial fears. It always starts small. A light on your dashboard flickers for half a second. Check engine. You tell yourself it's nothing, maybe just the sensor acting up. But deep down, you know what that warning means. It's a reminder that you're one unexpected repair away from a serious problem. And the truth is, it's never just one thing. Your car might break down this week. Next month, your laptop could crash when you need it most. And the month after that, your dog, your best friend who's been fine for years, suddenly needs emergency surgery. It's not bad luck. It's life, unpredictable, relentless, and sometimes brutally expensive when little things add up. For most Americans, financial fear doesn't come from massive disasters. It comes from small, relentless hits. That $200 car repair that always turns into $600. That dentist appointment you thought insurance covered, but didn't. That temporary subscription or buy now, pay later payment that quietly drains your checking account each month. You try to plan, you try to budget, but the problem is, life doesn't follow spreadsheets. And when your income barely covers your basic expenses, every surprise feels like a threat. Because when money's tight, even a minor inconvenience, like replacing a flat tire, can trigger full-blown panic. It's not about the tire, it's about what it represents. The realization that you're not in control. The constant mental calculator. If you've ever stood in a grocery store aisle doing silent math in your head, you know this feeling. You're not deciding between what you want and what you need. You're deciding between what you can afford right now and what can wait until next paycheck. You're checking prices, scanning the total, second-guessing every item in your cart. Do you really need the better brand of coffee? Can you skip the vitamins this week? Should you just put that one thing back, just in case? That mental calculator never turns off. Even when you're at work, even when you're out with friends, a part of your brain is constantly crunching numbers, running scenarios, predicting disaster. And it's exhausting, because living in constant financial alert mode isn't just mentally draining, it's physically harmful. The health toll of financial uncertainty. According to a recent Gallup poll, nearly 65% of Americans say money worries keep them awake at night at least once a month. But it's not just lost sleep. Money stress affects everything from digestion to immune function. Financial anxiety raises cortisol, your body's stress hormone. That means more headaches, more irritability, more fatigue that no amount of coffee can fix. It's the same chemical reaction your body would have in a life or death situation, except this danger isn't a tiger in the wild. It's a text notification from your bank. And here's the cruel irony. The poorer you are, the more your brain stays in survival mode. That makes it harder to think long-term, harder to plan, harder to save. It's not lack of discipline, it's biology. Your brain literally gets trapped in short-term thinking when you're under financial pressure. So when people say, "Why don't you just save more?" they're ignoring the science. You can't save your way out of anxiety when your entire nervous system is wired for survival. The American reality, one bill away. Here's a statistic that should make anyone pause. Nearly 57% of Americans say they couldn't cover a $1,000 emergency with savings. Think about that. In a country as wealthy as the US, most people are one unexpected bill away from borrowing, panicking, or both. That's not financial mismanagement. That's a system where expenses rise faster than paychecks. And so, people find themselves in a fragile balancing act. One side is daily life, bills, rent, groceries, gas. The other side is the unknown, the what-ifs that never stop coming. Every day feels like walking a tightrope. One gust of bad luck, and everything could come crashing down. The emotional domino effect. Now let's talk about what this does to your mind. When every expense feels like a potential crisis, it doesn't just create stress, it changes your behavior. You start saying no more often. No to social events, no to dinners out, no to plans that might cost too much. You stop living, you start avoiding. And the more you avoid, the smaller your world becomes. It's not that you don't want to have fun, it's that fun feels dangerous. Because every dollar you spend feels like you're gambling with your future stability. It's a quiet, invisible anxiety that eats away at your confidence and joy. And yet, if you look around, you'd never know it. People hide it well. They still smile in selfies, still post the vacation photos, still swipe their cards in public like everything's fine. But behind that mask is a storm of financial worry that never fully goes away. When everything feels urgent, financial anxiety also distorts time. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, everything feels like an emergency. That leads to what psychologists call scarcity mindset, a mental state where short-term needs overpower long-term goals. So you stop thinking about next year's savings or investments because today's bills are screaming louder. You might make impulsive decisions, payday loans, credit cards, buy now, pay later traps, because they give temporary relief, but those quick fixes come with heavy long-term costs. And before you know it, the cycle repeats. Stress, reaction, temporary relief, bigger stress. That's why so many Americans feel stuck. Not because they're careless, but because they're trying to survive a system designed for short-term consumption, not long-term stability. The emotional weight of being unprepared. There's a particular kind of fear that hits you when you realize you can't afford to fix something that's broken. It's not embarrassment. It's not even frustration. It's helplessness. You look at your car, your laptop, your vet bill, and your brain goes quiet. Because you know there's nothing you can do right now except hope it doesn't get worse. That's the emotional core of financial anxiety, powerlessness. Not being able to act when action is needed. That's why even small savings, a few $1,000s, can make a life-changing difference. Because it shifts your mindset from reacting to responding, the first glimpse of control. But before we talk about that shift, it's important to acknowledge this. If you've ever panicked over a car repair or cried over an unexpected bill, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Financial fear is universal. Even people who look comfortable on the outside have been there. The difference between those who stay trapped and those who move forward isn't luck. It's awareness. It's realizing that fear isn't permanent. Because while you can't control when life throws you a curveball, you can control how much power it has over you. That's what the next chapter is about. The turning point where people stop living in constant reaction mode and start building the cushion that brings real peace of mind. And surprisingly, that turning point starts much smaller than you'd expect. Not with $100K, not even $50K. It starts with something much more attainable, yet powerful enough to change everything. The real game changer, $10,000. You've probably heard 1,000 money rules. Save 20%, invest early, cut back on lattes, but none of those feel real when you're lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if your next paycheck will actually cover everything. So let's drop the buzzwords and talk about something real, a number that has quietly changed the way millions of Americans sleep at night. It's not $100,000, it's not $1 million, it's $10,000. The number that stops the panic. When researchers at the University of California studied financial stress, they found something fascinating. People's sense of security doesn't rise in a straight line with their income. It jumps at specific thresholds. And the first big jump, the moment people start breathing easier, happens around $10,000 saved. Why? Because $10,000 isn't just money. It's margin. Margin between you and disaster. Margin between surviving and actually living. Margin that turns late-night panic into quiet confidence. Backed by psychology, not luck. Here's what's happening in your brain. When you don't have savings, your body stays in survival mode. Your brain literally releases cortisol, the stress hormone, every time a bill comes in or your car makes a weird noise. You start making short-term, fear-driven decisions. But once you build a safety cushion, psychologists call it the security buffer, your brain shifts gears. It starts to think long-term again. You stop reacting and start planning. That mental shift is powerful. You move from, what if everything goes wrong, to, I can handle it. And according to behavioral economist Wendy De La Rosa, the difference between those two mindsets is what separates chronic stress from calm financial confidence. The math behind the magic. So why $10,000 and not $5,000 or $20,000? Because of what it covers. Let's break it down using simple American math. The average monthly cost of basic living expenses, rent, groceries, utilities, transportation, and insurance, sits around $3,000 in most U.S. cities, a bit lower in rural areas, a bit higher in big metros. That means $10,000 gives you roughly 3 months of breathing room, 3 months to recover from a job loss, 3 months to fix your car, pay the hospital bill, or relocate if needed, 3 months to not make desperate decisions. In other words, it buys you time. And time, financially speaking, is priceless. Because time is the difference between selling your stuff in panic and calmly finding a better solution. The emotional turning point, fear. Hope before $10,000, every emergency feels like a personal attack. After $10,000, emergencies feel like bumps in the road. It's subtle, but life-changing. When your water heater breaks, your first thought isn't, I'm doomed. It's, okay, I'll handle it tomorrow. That's the shift. From fear to hope, from crisis thinking to calm control. And that emotional shift affects more than money. It improves your relationships, your health, even your sleep. Think about it. How patient are you with your kids or your spouse when you're terrified about money? Not very. But when you know you've got a cushion, you breathe differently. You talk differently. You live differently. Stories that prove it meet. Sarah, a single mom in Ohio. She didn't win the lottery. She just decided to save $50 from every paycheck. It took 2 years to hit $10,000. Now, when her car broke down last winter, she didn't spiral. She paid the mechanic, smiled, and said, that's what my peace fund is for. Or take Marcus in Texas. After being laid off, he used his $10,000 cushion to cover rent for 3 months while starting a side hustle. That side hustle? Now his full-time job. These aren't millionaire stories. They're freedom stories. Because the real game changer isn't wealth, it's room to breathe. How this number rewires your behavior. Once you hit $10,000, everything changes about how you interact with money. 1. You stop chasing quick fixes. No more gambling on get-rich-quick crypto or panic-buying meme stocks. 2. You make smarter choices. You can finally shop by value, not by price. That means buying things that last. 3. You take calculated risks. You can quit that toxic job, start that small business, or move cities. Because you have a soft landing. 4. You become generous again. When you're not scared, you give freely. To friends, family, or causes that matter. $10,000 doesn't just protect you, it changes you. Why Americans need this more than ever. Let's be real. The cost of living in America is brutal right now. Housing, healthcare, and food prices have all jumped. Most people are one paycheck away from crisis. That's why the $10,000 goal isn't just practical, it's urgent. It's the modern version of freedom. Because when you have that buffer, you're no longer trapped by fear. You're no longer stuck in jobs you hate just to survive. You get to make choices based on what's right for you, not what's affordable today. And that's a quiet revolution happening across the country. Ordinary Americans taking back control one paycheck at a time. The moment you realize you're safe, picture this. It's Friday night. You check your online banking app. There it is, $10,127.43. You smile, not because you're rich, but because for the first time in years, you feel safe. You don't owe anyone an explanation. You don't need to prove anything. You just know that if life throws you a curveball, you'll catch it. That's what the real game changer feels like. from struggle to strategy. The $10,000 rule isn't about perfection, it's about momentum. Start small, $20 at a time. Round up spare change. Use your tax refund. Sell that old bike you never ride, because every step gets you closer to the point where your brain finally says, I can breathe. Once you hit that, the rest, investing, growing, building wealth, becomes easier. Because you're not running from fear anymore. You're moving toward freedom. Closing message. So, if you remember one thing from this video, let it be this. You don't need to be rich to feel secure. You don't need to win the lottery to sleep at night. You just need $10,000 worth of peace of mind. That's the real game changer. That's where fear ends and hope begins. The personal connection. Hey, I'm Nick. And yes, I'm that guy who thinks about money way too much. Not because I'm obsessed with fancy cars or flashing a big bank balance. I'm obsessed with understanding why people feel the way they do about money. Why some Americans glide through financial challenges while others are constantly stressed. Why money can make us anxious, angry, or even ashamed, even when we're doing everything right. Why I care about money psychology. Here's the deal. Money is emotional. It's tied to our identity, our relationships, and even how we see the world. I've spent years studying human behavior, not just spreadsheets and interest rates, but the real life stuff. How someone decides whether to pay rent first or put money into groceries. How parents silently worry about college funds while still trying to give their kids birthday parties they can't technically afford. And that's the part most personal finance gurus skip over. It's not just about money management, it's about people management. Managing your own fears, your habits, your relationships, and your stress. All of which are deeply tied to dollars and cents. A little about me. I grew up like a lot of Americans, watching my parents work hard, stretch every paycheck, and still worry about the unexpected. I've had nights lying awake thinking about rent, car repairs, or medical bills. And trust me, that anxiety isn't unique to my story. It's everywhere in the US. That shared experience is what drives me. I'm not here to lecture. I'm here to explore solutions, share what works, and sometimes just say the things everyone thinks but doesn't voice aloud. Building trust without being corporate. Look, I know you've probably watched a ton of finance videos online. Some are slick, professional, polished, but also distant. You feel like you're watching a commercial, not listening to someone who actually gets it. That's not how I want this to feel. I want you to feel like we're having a conversation. Late at night, maybe even at 3 a.m. when your brain won't stop worrying about money. Like I get it, like I've been there, and I want to help you see a way forward, without judgment, without complicated jargon, without feeling like you need to catch up to some unattainable standard. Relatability through real-life examples. Here's what I mean by relatability. I've bought the generic brand at the grocery store to make the budget work. I've hesitated before saying yes to a night out because I couldn't afford it, even when I really wanted to go. I've stared at a broken-down car and thought, great, now what? Sound familiar? That's because these are experiences most Americans share, even if no one talks about them online. And by sharing my own missteps and small wins, I want to make this clear. Financial stress isn't shameful. It's human. And change, real, meaningful change, starts with acknowledging that truth. Why my perspective matters. You might be thinking, Nick, why should I trust you? Here's why. I spend countless hours studying how people think, make decisions, and react emotionally to money. I break down complex financial concepts into simple, actionable steps that actually work for real life, not just theory. I'm not preaching from a pedestal. I'm sharing from the trenches. Just like you, this combination of psychology, behavior, and practical finance is what helps people finally break free from constant anxiety. And that's what I want for you, the human side of finance. Most personal finance advice focuses on numbers, but the truth is, money is a human problem, not a mathematical one. Think about it. How often do you avoid a social event because you can't afford it? How often does checking your bank app fill you with dread instead of confidence? How often do you make decisions out of fear instead of freedom? These are emotional experiences tied to money, and until you address the psychology behind them, no spreadsheet, budget app, or investment tip will solve the root problem. That's why I focus on the human side. Because when you understand yourself and your relationship with money, the numbers start making sense on their own. A conversation, not a lecture. I don't want you to feel like you're watching a finance lecture. Instead, think of this as a conversation with someone who's lived through the stress, figured out what works, wants to share strategies, insights, and mindset shifts in a way that's practical and relatable. That's the essence of this channel. Real talk about money, behavior, and human psychology. Trust and relatability in action. Here's a simple example. When I talk about the $10,000 milestone, I'm not just quoting research or throwing statistics at you. I explain what it feels like to reach that number. The relief you feel, the quiet confidence, the ability to make decisions without panic, that's real. And that trust grows because I'm not just telling you what to do. I'm showing that I've thought about it, lived some of it, and understand the journey from stress to stability. Why this matters to you. Why does my personal connection matter? Because viewers like you, Americans juggling bills, rent, family, and unexpected expenses, need guidance that feels authentic. You don't want a perfect, untouchable guru. You want someone who understands your fears, validates your struggles, guides you step by step toward actionable solutions. That's what I aim to do. Not from a boardroom, not from a flashy studio, but from real experience, human understanding, and a desire to help. Closing message for this section. So if you're watching this and thinking, I feel like Nick gets me, that's exactly the point. I'm not here to impress you with fancy financial terms. I'm here to help you see that you can gain control over your money, your decisions, and your peace of mind. Because once you connect with your money on a human level, not just a numerical level, everything starts to shift. Your fears, your choices, your confidence, all of it begins to transform. And that personal connection, understanding that you are not alone and you are capable, is the first step toward building real, lasting financial freedom. The $10,000 shift. Imagine this, it's 3 a.m., and instead of staring at the ceiling with your mind racing through every possible financial disaster, you sleep soundly. No tossing and turning, no racing heartbeat, just quiet, uninterrupted rest. That's the first real change that happens when you hit the $10,000 milestone. Because reaching this number isn't just about money in the bank. It's about transforming your mind, your emotions, and the way you navigate life. Sleep, from anxiety to rest. Before $10,000, every unexpected expense feels catastrophic. A car repair, a vet bill, or even a higher-than-expected electricity bill can trigger weeks of worry. Your brain stays in overdrive, processing what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Once you reach $10,000, your brain recognizes a buffer exists. That buffer sends a signal. You can handle problems if they arise. Anxiety decreases. Stress hormone levels drop. You fall asleep faster and enjoy deeper, restorative sleep. It might seem subtle at first, but the quality of your rest has cascading effects on mood, energy, and clarity during the day. Confidence. Quiet but powerful. Money insecurity is a silent confidence killer. When your financial cushion is small or non-existent, you second-guess almost everything. Should I ask for a raise? Should I take a leap into a new career or side hustle? Can I say yes to social events or opportunities, or will it break the budget? The $10,000 shift changes all of that. You begin to make decisions from a place of calm, not fear. You negotiate with confidence because failure is no longer catastrophic. You pursue opportunities that feel risky but have potential for growth. You walk into meetings, interviews, and social situations with quiet assurance. It's not a loud, dramatic confidence. It's subtle, but subtle confidence influences every aspect of life, career, relationships, and personal growth. Decision-making, from reactive to strategic. When living paycheck to paycheck, every choice is reactive. You respond to emergencies rather than planning ahead. Your decisions are colored by scarcity, which limits creativity and long-term thinking. $10,000 changes that dynamic. With a cushion, your decisions become strategic. You can weigh long-term benefits instead of just immediate survival. Calm. Emotional reactivity diminishes. You think clearly. Empowered. You feel in control, even in uncertainty. For example, a car breaks down. Instead of panic selling items or borrowing impulsively, you calmly repair it and adjust your budget for the month. A new job opportunity appears. Instead of rejecting it out of fear, you evaluate risk versus reward and act confidently. You consider investments or saving strategies rather than simply trying to keep up with bills. The financial cushion doesn't just protect you, it gives you mental bandwidth to make better decisions consistently. Psychological stability, the true value of $10,000. Here's the secret most people overlook. Money isn't the end goal. Psychological stability is. When you reach $10,000, you're not suddenly wealthy, but your mind stops being in constant crisis mode. That stability creates reduced fear. Emergencies are challenges, not catastrophes. Improved relationships. Less stress translates to more patience and connection. Greater focus. You can invest energy in growth, not survival. Think of it like a foundation. Without it, any house you try to build, career, personal goals, relationships, wobbles under stress. With it, you have solid ground. Real-life examples. Meet Jessica, a freelance designer in New York. Before hitting $10,000, she constantly worried about missed invoices or late payments. Her sleep was poor, and she avoided negotiating with clients. After hitting her first $10,000 milestone, she slept through the night without fear. She confidently raised her rates. She took on challenging projects that expanded her portfolio and income. Or consider David, a small business owner in Texas. Before his buffer, he avoided investing in new tools and employees. Once he built a $10,000 cushion, he made strategic investments, doubling his business growth within a year. The difference isn't money itself, it's the mental freedom that comes with a financial safety net. The domino effect. Reaching $10,000 sets off a chain reaction. 1. Financial cushion. Reduces stress and anxiety. 2. Reduced stress. Improves sleep and mental clarity. 3. Mental clarity. Enhances confidence and decision-making. 4. Confidence and strategy. Lead to better financial and life choices. This domino effect is subtle but powerful. It's why hitting this milestone is often described as life-changing. Beyond numbers, a mindset shift. The $10,000 milestone isn't just a bank balance, it's a psychological shift. Scarcity thinking fades. You stop living on the edge of panic. You begin to plan long-term rather than react short-term. You feel capable and empowered, not trapped by circumstance. It's proof that financial milestones are not arbitrary. Certain numbers have outsized effects because of the psychology they unlock. How Americans can reach this milestone building to $10,000 doesn't happen overnight, but it is achievable with consistency. Automatic savings. Set aside a small portion of every paycheck. Cut unnecessary expenses. Identify spending that doesn't add meaningful value. Side income. Freelance. Sell items or monetize hobbies. Track progress. Watching your buffer grow reinforces positive habits and keeps motivation high. Every small step contributes to the psychological shift. The moment you reach $10,000, you'll feel the difference immediately. Closing message for this section. The $10,000 shift is about more than money. It's about sleeping without anxiety, acting with calm and clarity, making decisions from a place of empowerment rather than fear, gaining psychological stability that touches every part of life. It's the first milestone that transforms how you live, not just what you can afford. Because true financial security isn't about wealth or luxury, it's about peace of mind, confidence, and freedom to make choices without fear.